Welcome back to another edition of the Fried Egg Golf Podcast. I am your host, Andy Johnson, and today I have a really fun episode. I think this is a range of spectrums of golf course architecture, about as furthest apart as you can get. First, we have Auggie Piza, a architect based out of Mexico, who is one of the lead designers on TGL, the new arena golf league that was created by Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy and Mike McCarley, that has been on ESPN the last 2 weeks and will continue this spring. I've been pleasantly surprised with TGL. I think I'm kind of taking the long game approach here I think I was really impressed in week one that they didn't fall on their face and that I enjoyed some pieces of it. I think it's been polarizing. People really dislike it that I know. Other people really, really like it. I think more people generally have liked it than disliked it, but I understand the edges of the spectrum, and I'm taking kind of a wait and see approach. I enjoyed watching it. It's different. It's not, really serious major championship golf, and I don't think they intend to be. One of the things I think is that I'm really interested in is the hole designs. And I think Auggie, of the three architects, has stood out the most. He has been the most daring with his designs. And I think, there's what I like about it is he seems to understand the idea of designing virtual holes is you have no constraints. And that kind of shows through with his work. And with his different designs. You can check out the hole designs on TGL's website, which is tglgolf.com. They have a whole section. They have fly over every hole. It's really clear which ones are Auggie's, just because of the aesthetic and I would say the bold nature of them. So anyways, we have Auggie Piza talking about that and a little bit about his career. And then on the back half of this episode, we have a really cool story. Northwood is a golf course in Sonoma County. It is a 9-hole Alister MacKenzie design. And it's one of those courses that offers just an incredible experience. It is open to the public, available to all. But it's seen better days. It's been one that I've always dreamed of restoring. And then I was made aware of a high schooler, now a college freshman, who actually began a restoration project at Northwood by reconstructing a bunker there this past year. So we have Will Carlson. He's a freshman at Cal Poly, and he went to high school in Sonoma County. He comes on to talk about how he began a restoration project at a golf course, an Alister MacKenzie golf course, as a high schooler. It's a small scale project, but a very neat project, and one that hopefully continues for years to come, because that golf course really could be really cool if they got more of those MacKenzie features back, and a lot of them are just sitting in the ground, as we talk about there. So that's Will Carlson. First, before we get into that, I wanted to talk and spend a minute on Eugenio Chacarra and his comments about LIV. Eugenio was a kind of rising amateur star. He started Oklahoma State. He was a great amateur and collegiate player. He won an NCAA regional. He won the Amir Ari Invitational, the Hawaiian tournament that has a lot of the top teams. He was one of the top rated amateurs in the world when he decided to go to LIV straight from college. He was kind of one of the early guys that obviously they had James Pyatt and Turk Pettit, but Eugenio went to LIV and then won early in his career. He is still 24 years old, only 24 years old, and he's leaving LIV to pursue a career on the PGA Tour. First, he will have to serve a year suspension. Very petty thing, since he never had any status on tour. It seems like a silly rule to me, that you're suspended, even if you never held a PGA Tour membership. You just made a choice to go somewhere else. That's silly. That's a topic for another day. Let's get to his comments. He talked to Flushing It, a Twitter account, over the phone, and talked about LIV and his decision to stop playing LIV. I'm thankful for everything LIV has given me. I'm 24 years old and my life is set. I don't know if it will work out for the best or not, but I know this is what my heart tells me is right, and it works for my motivation to wake up and grind and get better, and to say I can be a PGA Tour player one day. After he got released from the Fireballs, Chacarra could have played the promotions event, but decided not to, and he's focusing strictly on the PGA Tour. I see what it's like to win on the PGA Tour and how your life changes, how you get major access and ranking points. On LIV, nothing changes. There is only money. It doesn't matter if you finish 30th or 1st. Only money. I'm not a guy who wants more money. What will change my life is playing in Hawaii and qualifying for majors, qualifying for the Masters and the Ryder Cup. When I joined LIV, they promised OWGR and majors, and it didn't happen. I trusted them. I was the first young guy, and then others came after I made the decision. But OWGR and majors still hasn't happened. I saw you last year when they pulled the bid. It's frustrating, but I'm excited for the new opportunity and to see where my game takes me. I'm a winner, and I was never treated like a winner. On the PGA Tour, Ludwig Aberg has one win, and I have one win on LIV. He has one on the European Tour, and I have one on the International Series on the Asian Tour. So we have similar careers, but he has way more experience and plays way bigger tournaments, but we have the same wins. We have performed similar. What tours I can play on, I have won. Same with him. He's the number 6 player in the world. Everyone talks about him, but on LIV, I'm the only young guy who's won, and they never talk about me. They always talk about the same guys. I'm not blaming them. They probably know more, but they don't really care about the young guys much. So this decision is what's best for me. I'm very thankful for what they've done, but my mind is different now, and I want to get to what I was dreaming about when I was little, because obviously LIV didn't exist when I was growing up. I was watching Tiger Woods winning on the PGA Tour, and I want to do that. Those were some pretty damning quotes about LIV and the competition. Let's unpack them a little bit. Chacarra at this point has made a lot of money. I remember the rumors of an 8+ digit deal. So it was an 8-digit deal. You're talking tens of millions of dollars when he signed. He won an event. That's a $4 million windfall. He is in a very unique position where he is 24 and his life is set. He has maybe not generational money by the way some deem it, but he does not have to think about money the rest of his life if he is smart with it. And now he wants more. You know, I think there is an interesting arc here, and what, you know, when you talk about anybody in their profession, how they evolve. I think people want praise and want money, and then they want to win and make a lasting impact. I think Chacarra is at that place at age 24. He wants, at this point, to be relevant. You hear the Aberg. I'm still jinxed by the announcing crew with Aberg right out of the gate. But Ludwig Aberg, you see the comments about that. I think they're a little bit of an extrapolation for Chacarra to compare him to the number 6 player in the world. But on the surface, he has accomplished a lot. If he was 24 and had won an event or maybe two events on the PGA Tour, we would be talking about him as one of the bright young players of the game a lot more than we do currently. And a lot of that has to do with the difficulties LIV has at establishing relevance in the game of golf outside of just taking players. The other aspect of this, like the damning nature of this for LIV, and I sympathize a little bit with them not being able to get OWGR points and major major championship access, like, a barrier of that, because I do think like you can make an argument that they deserve some of that. And this isn't not about that, but I just think the nature of what he talked about, nobody cares about anything over there, and nobody cares about any of the results that LIV has. You finish 30th, you finish first, it doesn't matter. It's all money. That's it. I think that's the issue with LIV, is that like we saw it again with the relegation. Brandon Grace and Bubba Watson got relegated, but they're back on the teams this year. So they can't even run a relegation. It's not a serious product. It's not a serious tour. And here we have young, talented players going there and not getting the development and the really fostering that they need. I think like for a while, people were wondering, like, would LIV become this great destination for the best young amateur players in the world? After Chacarra's comments, after his experience and how he fairly eloquently for a 24-year-old outlaid the issues that he was facing there, I have a hard time believing this is going to become a preferred destination for young players. So, with the new president coming into office in a couple of weeks, like, we're probably going to see some sort of deal. I can't imagine LIV is going to go anywhere, but I have a harder time believing LIV's going to go anywhere on its own when players are saying things like this. Part of running a successful golf tour is developing young talent and developing young stars. There's no way that this tour can exist if the only way they accumulate talent is by paying ludicrously high sums of dollars to get them. A lot of this would be developing talent. LIV's proven they can't do that. And, it just makes it more and more clear that this is not a long-term solution for a tour. So I'm excited to see Chacarra in a year attempt to gain relevance in the sport that he's very talented at, that he has a bright future, and to see, it will be a fun story to watch him try and climb from no status to status on the PGA Tour over the next couple of years. It is silly that he's sitting out a year. All right, let's get over to Auggie Piza, talk TGL, another upstart league, and then we'll talk to Will Carlson. First, let's talk about our friends at Goodwalk Coffee. Goodwalk has been a partner now, and we have developed our own proprietary blends with them. We have the Shotgun Start blend, which is a darker roast, and the Fried Egg blend, which is a lighter roast. That's the one I drink every day, really. One of the things I love is their subscription. I get it delivered every other week, and it comes, and I never have to worry about get coffee. I get 2 bags every other week. That's the right amount of coffee for me. You might need weekly. You could do weekly. You could do monthly. But these, like, what I love about it is, like, I'm never scrambling to go to the grocery store. I don't have to run there the night before I realize I don't have any coffee, or the morning, worse off, the morning of, and then I'm late to get coffee. One way also, if you're looking to save a little bit of money, don't go to Starbucks. Don't go to your local coffee shop to buy coffee. Just make it at home. I've got a good drip coffee maker. I used to do pour over. I don't have the time to do pour over anymore. Anybody getting into my mentions about that? I've got a nice drip coffee maker. It makes great coffee, and I'm so happy with my Goodwalk coffee. So one of the things is this helps support what we're doing here. We have a partnership with them, so when you buy Fried Egg coffee, we see some of that those purchases. So head over to goodwalkcoffee.com/fried egg. You can subscribe there. If you use the promo code fried egg, you'll save 20% on your entire order. And if you sign up for that subscription, you get 30% off your first order and then 10% off all future shipments. Big thanks to Goodwalk. Check out goodwalkcoffee.com and our 2 blends there. All right, let's get to Auggie Piza. All right, Auggie, welcome on the show. I'd love to hear a little bit about your background and how you got into golf design in the first place.
Well, Thank you, Andy. Thank you, PJ. Let me do this so that we all create a nice empathy here on this triangle. These are my design glasses. So
That's great.
It's great to be here. Thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate this space.
So how did you get into golf design? What in your when growing up, like what inspired you to become a golf course architect?
It's I'll try and keep it short. This is
you don't have to keep it short.
You can. All right. Well, when I growing up, I grew up in a household of two PE teachers. Both my parents PE teachers. So I grew up in sports. I grew up in competitive sports, playing everything, ironically, except golf. So I played all types of sports competitive until I graduated from university. And I had two passions: sports and architecture. So architecture, I wanted to be an architect since I was in 5th grade elementary. That I can't explain. It was just kind of like a ray of light. It's just like, hey, you're gonna study architecture, and that's what I did. I studied vertical. My background is in vertical I'm a vertical architect, regular architect. And when I was studying, I'm like, how can I mix architecture with sports? Because that was my other passion. And in the beginning, growing up, I thought that I would be designing, stadiums, maybe the next Charger stadium. Diehard Charger fan back here. So
sorry about that
hurting.
performance.
I'm still hurting. I'm still hurting. But we were playing with house money, so we're good. We're good. We'll see about next year. We'll see everybody next year. So. That was my kind of like my dream. How do I mix? How do I fusion all of this? And when I grew up in the country club in Tijuana, and of course I knew about golf. Of course I loved it. It just didn't. When I was growing up, it just didn't do it for me. I wanted to get dirty. I wanted to hit people or get hit or whatever. Contact sport. And when I started in university and graduated, I completely picked up golf. So that's when I actually became like a golfer, and it was kind of like it was just there, like a ray of light. Hey, golf architecture is the answer. I was very lucky to have applied to Paragon back then in the Jack Nicklaus construction company. They were doing El Dorado and Palmilla in Cabo. Mm-hmm. I applied. They said yes, and that's how I started my career, focusing in golf course architecture. And since then, 25 plus years ago, I was very lucky to fusion my two passions, sports and architecture, through golf design.
So you get that first job, you probably had an idea of what golf architecture, golf design. I feel like people in general have, like, an outsider has this like glitzy and glamorous view of what a golf architect does, but very few understand what the start of a career in golf architecture was like. What was it like those early days on site, working with El Dorado there? What type of things were you doing, and were there any second guessing during those early days?
Every day, waking up at 5:30 to arrive to a 6 a.m. Work hour session, freezing in Cabo because it does get cold. Yes, funny enough you asked, because my first assignment was to make sure that all the labor guys had their jugs of water filled up with water and ice eventually if it was hot. And that was my first gig. I was just running around the golf course in a little truck that got stuck in sand every other day, walking around. That was my first gig. So nothing glamorous about that. I was I just graduated from architecture. I'm all like hyped up, and I'm like, oh, boom! You go down there, and you're going to be, putting the luggage onto the airplane, and that's your first gig, and that's how it started. That was my first gig. Then I started to work my way up little by little. Now, I am very lucky once you put those things together, that I did learn golf architecture, not then, but at that time, I was learning it from the ground up, literally. So I got to see all the drainage, all the irrigation, earth movement, shapings, finishes, etc. And I was kind of like, coordinating a few things here and there, running errands up and down. But then the directors knew that that part of my dream was to become a golf architect, so they would put me as a driver on the when Jack Nicklaus arrived for the walkthrough. So they got me listening behind right there to everything that they were saying. You know, it was, you had Jim Light there, you had Jack Nicklaus, you had all the big boys, and they were discussing the holes, etc. So that's when I was like, ooh. And that's how I started to learn at that time.
From those early rides with Jack and his team, is there anything in particular that sticks with you from today from those conversations?
The number one, the attitude. I think that that getting one of the things that stuck with me and still to date, and I think this is why we're sitting together now, is the quality control of things. You know, not letting go and not compromising for not for anything. You know, sometimes you do, but at some level, once you pass that bottom line, then you never go back, because then you do things cheap or not well or less quality or stuff like that. I think that was just tough. That was the best lesson that I've learned working with in that at that level of architecture and project like El Dorado, Palmilla, and then I jumped to being a junior project manager for the first Tom Fazio course in Cabo, Querencia. So that was my schooling on my first 3 years. Sign me up. It was fantastic to have that schooling with at that level of quality of architecture, of quality of design and quality of works.
So you obviously got your start building these courses in Mexico.
Yes.
I'd be curious, like where were your early kind of, I guess, like what are some of the designs, courses, architects that really inspire you as an architect?
Definitely Alister MacKenzie was my first inspiration. But that was a little bit. I started scrolling in now to the history, because the only way that I was going to make it as an architect was going to be through the books. I wasn't going to win a green jacket anytime soon. So it had to be through the books. That was my only way. So I had to be a student of the game. I was actually studying all the details, the plans, the drawings, the adjustments, everything that went through on the walkthroughs with either, at that time I walked through before I jumped into architecture per se, I was completely on the construction side. Yeah. So I was walking through at different projects with Robert Von Heggie, who I also learned a lot from him. Robert Von Heggie, Tom Fazio, Jack Nicklaus, and eventually also Gary Player and his team. So I had that schooling, and then I talking about hitting the books. I applied to at that time the only master's degree in golf course architecture was in the University of Edinburgh College of Art. I applied to that. I got in, and I had to sell everything. I think I sold even my toaster, whatever. Let's go and let's buy a kilt and go to Scotland. So that's when I really dove into the I don't want to say true, but it's just the old, golden age, the most conservative, less is more attitude in golf design. I had the opportunity to learn firsthand, played, fantastic golf courses when I was there for a couple of years. I worked part-time for a Scottish architect, then worked full-time for the Scottish architect, a dear friend, Ken Moody. And that's when I made the jump to architecture. I was drafting for him at that time.
What was it like being a student not from Scotland in Edinburgh? That had to be a incredible, for someone who's into architecture in general, an incredible experience. What are a few of the things that, like maybe one thing that you really take away from that experience and think back on often?
My the way that they grabbed me and just put me down to earth and said, Augie, this is not the way, we do it here. This is, I was coming from that school that I told you about. So, it's the bigger, the bolder, the better, the all of that stuff. And I was, at least in Cabo, that was my experience. You're moving small mountains from left to right. You're rebuilding arroyos. You're filling them up. You're cutting them down. So it was massive lakes, etc. And it's majestic. It's beautiful. It's bold. It's character. I love that part. But when I got my first assignment over there in Edinburgh at the uni, it was like, okay, we're gonna do this assignment. We have this assignment with 3-hole assignment, and I was like moving contours everywhere and doing this and doing that, and I got put up to the board, and I'm like, this is not how we do things. And I'm like, wait a minute. So that was my first kind of like, that's my first take, and I love that. I love sharing that story because that brought me down to earth in a lot of things. It connected me with nature, connected me with the sensitivity and sensibility of earth, and that's when I started also to grow, not only as an architect but also as a human being in being sensitive to nature.
Well, I mean, I think it's one of the most interesting aspects of golf architecture, right? Is the big range of types of projects there are. From we're going to move, no stone unturned. We're going to move, heaven and hell to make this a fascinating golf experience, to we're going to try and go and do as little as possible and let nature do the talking. I think, like with anything, different forms of this art appeal to different people. And there is a wide range. And I think, something that is sometimes misconstrued maybe is like something that I think I've I've earned a greater appreciation for is, I think like just in general, what should be celebrated is golf courses that make you feel something, even if you're kind of viscerally offended by it. Especially if you're offended by it and there's a big group of people that love it. Like, to me, that's provocative, right?
Yes.
And in terms of how an art moves forward, there has to be feelings in all directions, right?
I love it. I love that you're saying that, because going back to that situation that I was in, I'm like, I understand that. I didn't take it personal. I understand that this is your world. This is what you know. This is what you like. And this is your critique towards my work. But I love character. I love doing this. I love my involvement in these places and the character and doing this on this canvas. I love it. And yes, of course, that at the end, I believe that as artists, we should create things that move internal, something internal, wakes up something internal in whoever's there to witness it.
I think this is a good segue to your TGL designs, because I think that the thing that caught my eye is that, to me, I felt that your designs I felt like you were and I this isn't necessarily a slight at the other architects, but I felt like you understood the assignment a little bit more of like, we can build anything. And I think we saw it in the first week. You've created some provocative designs that put players in situations where they have to make decisions, and different players of different skill sets have to make different decisions. I thought it was a really great moment in the first match when the second hole was one of your designs, pick your plunder. For those that didn't watch, but Matt Fitzpatrick, a shorter hitter, had to go up the, I believe, left side.
Left side, yeah.
A longer hitter, was it Wyndham Clark that teed off? Hit it up the right side,
yeah,
which has a longer carry. Neither of them chose the middle fairway, which has an even longer carry and gets a more advantage. But there was a real decision making, and it was a hole. If you built that hole in person in real life, people will be like, "This is effing crazy." And this can't be a real golf hole, but we're in this setting where you can build anything you want. I'd like to hear about how TGL started with you, and what were the like initial prompts? Like, how did the process of creating holes happen with the league? Like,
Yeah, well, I love your comments, and yes, I believe at the end it is a great complement and a great balance of what we did between the three designers: Nicholas Design, Bo Welling, a couple of firms that I've admired throughout my career. So it's kind of cool that we had the opportunity to work together. Everybody was working in a vacuum. You probably heard that. We were all like secluded, and we just had that assignment to come up with holes. I think at the end, when you put
their assignment was just like design us holes.
Yes, it's kind of like design holes for, obviously, we had the brief of what's TGL, how's it going to be played. We had the fixed green zone, which is also kind of like, okay, we can rotate it, we can have different angles, we can attack it on a draw or on a fade or a high trajectory. If the bumps, we can put it in front, we can put it in the back. We would decide how we twist the big part and then the rotating part. So there's two components that we can play with. We can play with the tongue. So the tongue, you can stick it out, or you can put it behind, and then you would have to come onto the green, let's say on a par 3 or an island green or whatever. So we knew about the brief and how it was played and what the restrictions, digital restrictions or we would have. But after that, it's an all go. So we all left with our sheet of paper, and it's like, okay, let's draw. And we didn't meet for like a year, probably, until everything was designed. I was working with Full Swing. Well, everybody was working with Full Swing because they were producing our holes, and which was very, very cool, very exciting, because at the end, the design process was very, very regular to a regular on soil project. The difference is that instead of the shaper hopping on a dozer, we had a shaper with handling a mouse and doing all the programming, digital programming, and then we were there on the back and forths. So yes, the brief was, let's think outside the box, let's create, and then we teamed back with my team, Piza Golf, and our rationale was, how can we get this like completely out of the box, get this, with think completely outside, but the lines stopped when it was, but let's still keep the integrity and respect the integrity of the game, because that was us. I mean, we never thought about, going underneath the clown's mouth or anything like that, or jumping from one planet to the other, which it doesn't mean that we didn't think about it. But
I have to ask, like, I think your holes stand out because they are the craziest holes. And I say crazy, and I think that all these holes should be crazy. Like, for the most part, I think
I'll take it as a compliment.
Well, like, I think like one of the things is, like, the realities of pro golf is it's outgrown their arenas. They have dramatically outgrown the existing arenas. We often see it's just driver wedges for the most part at a lot of PGA Tour venues. To me, the appeal of TGL is that it is an amazing place to test design principles on tour pros at a scale that you can make angles and different things really matter. But like, to me, your holes, they are by far the most I'll use the term provocative. And
thank you.
And what I did you have any holes that got left on the cutting room floor that went even further?
Concepts, yes. Holes, no. Concepts, yes. Yes. I mean, it's like it's like getting a gig to do an album. Obviously, you're going to have a cut room, and but the problem that the situation is that that album needs to have 12 hits. How are we going to do that? I don't know. It's because it's kind of tough because we want something different. We just did A. Okay, now B has to be completely different than C. Some you can see similarities because we really like the approach. Let's say on flex and pick your plunder, it's the same. It's a similar approach, different strategy, but it's a similar approach. And there, we thought it was pretty exciting, at least in our way of thinking, because we're going to have match play, we're going to have alternate shot. So how do we level the playing field if one top golfer draws the ball beautifully? Hey, wait a minute, give me that thing. I'm going to cut the ball beautifully over here on this side, or I'm going to go straight down the middle. So it leveled the pitch when it comes to match play and alternate shot. It's like, we have these different options that I don't have to just go one way and have to absolutely shape the ball to what the architect is telling me. I can have different alternatives, and that's why we created those holes that have the alternative. Others they're a little bit more strategic, or like the spear, where it's just 15 yards where it pinches, and you decide if you green light it or if you pull back.
I think the spear is a really interesting one because part of this is the strategy of how a team sets their lineup and how the hole interacts from that standpoint. And to me, the spear's an interesting. So the spear is a hole. Imagine, for those that haven't seen it, two triangles meeting and at a point, and how that would create a very narrow point in the fairway, and that's at 286 yards.
Mm-hmm.
The most narrow point, and it's wider and on either side of that point where those two triangles meet. Now, like if I was setting my lineup, I would probably, especially with the format of alternate shot, if I was a savvy captain, I would be making sure that one of my long hitters is on that tee shot in particular because of the huge advantage that you can gain if you could fly at 315 versus, it seems like, did you roughly the PGA Tour average length tee shot carry is probably around 286.
Yes, that was we measured it off.
Yes. So you can build intentionality, which I think is interesting from the sense of like, when I think about how other sports work, if a defensive coordinator in football plays let's just call it a cover zero where they blitz, that's going to lead to the offensive coordinator calling a specific play to combat that defense. And with hole design, as this evolves, you can create intentionality of how the players and the teams are going to play their offense, their shots. And I think that's the unique aspect of TGL, that in a huge advantage for the league in the sense of that. I guess if I was going to put on my critics hat, which, is part of what I do, I think one of my questions would be with you, and you've spoken about them, with the pick your plunder, and flex and the other triple fairway hole, was there idea, what was the kind of the idea of going with three holes that have a really similar feel in terms of the three fairway? Did you have other concepts that you were considering putting in there instead of in varying the three fairway look?
Well, it is once you see one, it's very easy to have the gymnastics and say, I've seen that before. Well, yeah, of course. Well, so I think that when you have something, and at least in my way of thinking, if you have something good, if I have a good riff, why wouldn't I use it? Why wouldn't I use a variety of that riff on the next song? Why wouldn't I use this? Because it's so, at least again, in my way of thinking, I really enjoyed designing this. It's the first time that I don't have to count irrigation heads. I don't have to count earth movements.
The drainage.
I'm like, let's go. Yeah. I don't have to do any value engineering. Come on, Ed. So I'm going crazy with double fairways, a little tongue over here if you want to hit 330 in the flex. So let's have fun with this. Let's see where they go. And for me, the best reward that I can get is if that team huddles up and takes us a slight second more to discuss these holes. That's the best reward that I can do. So I'm looking forward to that, and that's why I created these different tongues and avenues. And yes, when we came out with that concept, of course I reproduced it in 2 or 3 different scenarios.
One of the holes that has not been played yet, and I don't believe is in this Tuesday's routing, is the Sterling. That's a hole I'm particularly interested in.
Thank you.
What tell me a little bit about that and how it's going to play out.
Well, that's a node. I have in our designs. I have a little bit of ode pieces here and there. And that's in the Highlands of Scotland, and it has I also like to play with a little bit of humor, Andy. I also like to play when you see my designs. I like to play with a little bit of humor.
Especially with this league, there has to be humor in the designs.
Well, thank you. I like to play, so I'm like, let's put a nice bunker right here in the middle. And ironically, the worst place that you can play it, it's stripe it down the middle. So you have to choose. You have to choose left or right now. With the types of shots that these players at the level they play, they're going to have to choose starting right and ending left, or starting left and ending right, which is something that I'm very much looking forward to see. And for us, I would just be aiming at the bunker in the middle, and I know that I'm not going to hit it, and I'm just going to be safe on the sides. So that's a little bit. I'm also thinking a little bit of how would the regular golfer, a 10 plus handicap, how would they play it as well? Will they have fun? And that was part of also the brief, Andy. Let's get my brief once we huddled up in Piza Golf. Let's do something crazy, but would it be a golf course or a golf hole that I would love to play and play and play? Or would it just be the wow factor and I'll play it once and then, okay, that's enough? Would it be a place where I would love to, if we put all these together in a treasure map, like I like to call our routing, if we put these in a treasure map, one besides the other, or like a regular 18-hole golf course, would I like to become a member? Would I like to go there and play every day, here and there? Would I like to do that? So these holes are pushing the creative boundary, but to hopefully at one point we can play them live one day without the setting. Of course, we're not going to have a floating spear in the middle of the Hudson River or whatever it is, but or the temple in Machu Picchu. We're not going to have that, but we can have that pinched right there, maybe in a desert style hole or something at the end. If we carve out the hole, maybe we can get away with it.
Yeah, I think like that is something. Like, I think one of the neat things that probably hasn't been explored much in golf architecture, and we've seen it. We did like a little TGL hole design competition in our membership, and somebody created it in 2K20 or PGA Tour 2K on their course. And we've seen we had like this random guy that I didn't even know these people existed that play PGA Tour 2K and do like YouTube videos. Uh-huh. He was like commenting about it. It's a actual place where you could like test design ideas and see what people think about it. But I think one of the tough things, I think like in terms of what you guys had to do, one of the things that I think is the toughest aspect of the task was the green being fixed, the bunkers, the green, and being able to move around contours, and move around the orientation, but being fixed with a green.
Yeah.
How did you try and work around that?
Uh, that's a very interesting question because it is, if you see it in comments all over the place. Just, oh, they should have done this, they should have done that. Obviously, not everybody knows that there are restrictions. There are technical restrictions. There are, technology restrictions because we're not, at the end we are where we're at in technology, and it will only get better. Season 2, grab on because it's going to be obviously better. It's like grabbing Madden 97 and Madden 2025. It's the same thing. It's going to be in that it's going to be sequenced like that eventually. Technology is here to stay, and I think this TGL is amazing. It's fantastic, and it's only going to get better. This is the worst version of TGL that we're going to play. Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
I think that's the thing that like so many people were, and I live in this world where like, you have to come up with definitive takes about things in the moment. And like, I think my general definitive take about last week, the first week of this was, listen, like, we can't really have a definitive take because this is like, we've never seen anything like this.
Exactly.
And so much of an idea becoming a fully formed version of what it is trial and error. I mean, like, I think that's the thing that drew me most to your designs was that there's a real like willingness to try stuff as opposed to, I felt like some of the other holes, and I don't mean this in necessarily about, they felt like a hole like I could go play on any Jack Nicklaus golf course, like a few of them. And it's like, well, that's not interesting to be in this format of golf. Is we should test, the very far ends of what this is. And if we have to rein it back in, we can easily rein it back in, but it seems like it should start pretty abstract in terms of where it is.
It's kind of like, well, we practice that gymnastics per se in our regular design world. I have a saying: let's maximize to minimize. Mm-hmm. Don't limit yourself anywhere, anytime, at any place. Let's go. Let's propose this, and then whatever the factors are, we start minimizing, and we arrive to that concept now. But and that was the same approach that we had. Let's maximize to minimize. So yes, of course, 1, 2, or 3 concepts were left in the cut room, but at the end, when we started minimizing, it's like, this is going to work. This is great. This, and yes, everybody's taking risks, and I love that that you guys appreciate this, because at the end, it's all about risk taking. Being critiquing is it's like a food critic. No, it's very easy. You're just there.
It's always easy being the critic. The critic's the easy job.
Exactly.
I got to be the one that just sits back and say, well, they could have done this.
You exactly. which is fantastic. So I'm glad. I really love that you appreciate all this. The getting out there. Everybody's taking this risk. It's been till now. It's been a great product. The ratings have been there. It's something, and I'll share this. It's last Tuesday, or the Tuesday of the inaugural. I don't think I've ever felt that way, and I don't think I'll ever feel this way again, because we're going to take this for granted now. So having this out, once the lights were out, once the DJ was in, once everything, it was like, once the first shot was shot on one of our holes, we got the start and the plank. It was like, okay, we can't That's it. We can't control anything anymore. We did our best. Everybody did their best, and it's out there. And now it's all, let's keep on building.
I got to ask, all the players got walk-up music. What would have been your walk-up music if you got to pick?
It wouldn't be mariachi if you were wondering. No, I'm just kidding. That's a good one. I think it would be.
I should have given you that one to prep, but I just had to. When you started talking about the lights coming on and the inaugural, that was a big hit with everybody.
I'll tell you what. I've never been in a mainstream music guy. So for me, it would have to be, somewhere in the Sparks, the Smiths, Franz Ferdinand, Paul Keaton aspect of things. I really enjoy that type of music. So it would have to be somewhere there.
All right, we could work with that. I guess back to the fixed green. To me, thinking through the assignment, the hardest hole to design with a fixed green has to be the par 3.
That's a very good observation, and yes, part of it. And I have to admit, the difficult part of TGL was designing par 3s for me. I only speak for myself.
Yeah, I can't think of like how do you differentiate. And one of my questions, I don't know if you asked this or if it did they have the ability to like turn off some of the green?
That's an interesting one. Sorry, Andy. There was, having said this, one of our holes, which is on the rocks, it's called On the Rocks. It's one of
Did you get to name the holes?
Yeah, I did. But then like a good book, it changes. No, so I had one name from the turn-in name, and then it evolved, and some of them changed. The majority did not. So it was kind of cool. So going back to that, and this is a shout out to the team at TMRW and Full Swing and everybody involved in TGL. It was my last hole that I had to turn in was a par 3. Oh my God! I was just kind of like an exam, and when you're there and you want to leave that to the end and come back to it, I'm like, okay. But when we were discussing the design detail and the angle and the approach, in a great team effort, there was the proposal of removing the tongue bit, what they're calling the Millennium Falcon. You've probably seen that, and just keeping the rotor part, just the green section. So it became kind of like a disc, kind of like a vinyl right there. And then we started to tweak the design, and it's actually a great hole. I love it because the short, and they played it this way. It's a 135 plus yard par 3, but it opens up in an angle. It has 5 different peninsulas that you can play it on the right, and the green is shaped to that. Talking about the green, how you can rotate it. Mm-hmm. So if you attack the right, you can play 180 plus, and the left almost 220, or vice versa. And you would have the angle of a cut or the angle of a draw, or play. Then when it encroaches, it starts coming down all the way to 135 plus, which is when you have the best players in the world not doing a full shot, that keeps it exciting. So that's the objective of that one.
Yeah, to me, when you talk about like how it could evolve, I think like if they can figure something out with the green area, it would just add a lot of flexibility. Like I've thought about like, could you take the green and say I want to turn on only 3,000 square feet of it, and then have like a bunker, only one of the bunkers and runoff areas, and can we just like only have a portion of the green zone available and the approach area available, and we're going to just say it's water on the right side, because we've turned off the right path of the green. right? So if the ball lands there from the simulator, it seems like that should be something that like, oh, it's just in the water and you're taking a drop. That was one thing I was thinking about in terms of that. How did you think about like the contouring of the green, and are there limits to that? That was another question I had. It seemed like the greens were nobody expected it, but a really challenging aspect was chipping and putting on the greens, because it's like the ball reacts a lot differently on the AstroTurf than it would in real life. I thought that one of the things I walked away was like, oh, like as for an architect, you can really deliver some penalty with short siding misses with the AstroTurf, almost more so than you can in real golf.
Yep, and that's why you have to hit the green. Yeah. No, it is a challenging bit. Obviously, the green zone. There's two major challenges I think for these players. One is getting out of the rough. It's because when you have to drop that knee height and the ball.
And it seemed like it was sitting down a lot.
Yeah. So that's an interesting shot. If you're in the rough, I think that's a very especially far away, and you're in your second shot. That's a tough shot. Then obviously, all kidding aside, at the end, if you're in the green, the technology, we were not involved in anything that has to do with the green. It was just given to us at the end. But obviously you try and get it to the best pace and play that technology or artificial turf can give us to date.
How much contour can you build into that? How much, if you could put into like feet terms, maybe like how much can it go up and down in terms of building the contours in the green?
Once you're in the jacks, if that's your question, there's three sections that has jacks right there. Yes. The top bit, the bottom, and the right per se, the three major pin placements. Then that section has jacks, and you can manipulate that. Obviously you can go further to whatever percent you want, but that can be manipulated to a right to left 2%, 1%, 1.5%, and next time the next hole can be manipulated to a left to right 1%, 2%. Once you're in that, in the sombrero area, in the pin placement area. If you're on the outside, if you're on the outskirts of that place where you have the jacks, there's no contours. The contours are fixed. The area is fixed. Everything's what it is right there that you see the top tier on the green. And I think it's interesting. I don't know what it was running, but I think it should be running more than 11. That was an interesting thing.
Seemed fast.
Yeah. I thought it was 11 plus easily.
Yeah, it seemed very hard to putt. I saw like the light. I mean, it's like things you don't think about, but like some players were talking about like the lighting being challenging because of how bright it is.
Makes sense.
It seemed like most of the contours were like sections. It'd be like tier, like three sections. Is there ability with the jacks to make like just like a smaller feature? Is it mostly you have to plateau them?
Well, we wouldn't take it to that. We wouldn't have a little dip or something like that. We wouldn't take it to that level. We want to challenge, once you're in the green zone, we want to make it as direct as possible. It's not like we want your ball to do this and then come back and then hop into the hole. That's not the point. The green is usually set to whatever you can see, so that on the next hole or for the next read, you can have a read from the last hole. Now I don't know how long they practice, or if they have a practice round or something, because that would be interesting. I don't know I don't know if they have an opportunity to be there 1 or 2 days or that morning before and just practice and practice and practice. That's that's something that could be interesting as well.
What did you think about what were the conversations around the conditions? I think like this is the other thing, architecture and conditioning are intertwined. And like in terms of like how the ball reacts on the screen to when it lands, and like this pace of the fairways, I think a lot of people would have liked to see the ball, roll a little bit more and land on the green. I thought Ludwig Aberg had a time where it was clear he hit a flyer and the ball almost spun when it hit the green, which seemed to me very unrealistic. When a player of his caliber starts yelling sit, 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 sit right after he hits it, that usually means it's going over the green. Somehow it held the green. In that case, and then obviously there was no wind in the first match. And I've seen on some of your hole dynamics, you have like ideally plays in a crosswind, which I thought that was for the spear.
The spear, yeah.
That's a smart thing. What if you're trying to get somebody to hit to a little spot, like a crosswind would be really fun to watch. So what was the conversation around like the designing with the conditioning in mind? Do you think that's something that they will ramp up over time with wind and maybe a little bit more firmness to the green where everything just doesn't land kind of like a pillow?
Well, we did have thatch problems on the green, and no, I'm just kidding. So no,
I was like, wait, where's it going?
No. We'll make sure we turn off the sprinklers next time before the game starts.
I think that was a common complaint. Was like, I want to see that these balls should be rolling more.
We'll get it dry for you next time, and for all the players. I think it's interesting. Again, it's going to be ongoing. I can't answer all these questions because they're on in the technology side of that would be something for full swing and everything. But when I think the most the most exciting part is the challenge, or the having the players mic'd up, having the shot clock, having all of these factors that also factor into the fun aspect of this, which is made for TV. Let's not overlook that part, because if we're trying to just get our brain into from the golf that we know into the golf that we don't, if that's our barometer, then it's easy to, hey, what's going on there? Hey, you didn't replace your divot. What's going on, man?
Yeah.
What's going on? I hadn't seen a divot coming in. It's spun. Hey, nope, this is no good. I hate this.
Yeah.
It's easy. It's so I would invite everybody to jump in and kind of like, hey, wait a minute. We have golf on Monday. We got golf on Tuesday. It's a 2-hour show. We get to see these guys right here. Players, top players in the world, PGA Tour players. And then we don't know where this is headed. We'll probably see celebrities, etc. But at the end, this is something that is also to have fun. Let's not forget that we're all here, and the teams are too, hopefully, with as competitive as they are. Let's have fun. Let's enjoy this.
This process with TGL, you've designed some crazy fake holes. Has that changed anything with the way you've thought about designing real person holes?
Oh, that is a beautiful question. Of course it has. I like to push boundaries. I love character. If you go on to, I don't know if you've seen The Pit, if you've seen some of my regular designs, I don't know if they're out there.
I haven't seen them in person, but I've seen the sketches. Yeah.
Let's do it one day. So they're there. I think we're very lucky. You mentioned the word crazy, which I took as a compliment, because yes, I think that we can get crazy. We have crazy ideas, but they only remain ideas unless you have a crazy client. That's the guy that you're looking for, the crazy client that has empathy with you. Like, oh my God, I love this. Let's go, Augie. And that's when you become an architect. If not, you're just a theorist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you don't, I can sketch all I want. If they're not in real life, I'm not an architect. I'm a theorist. And that's where we've been very lucky in our career to believe in what we do, to believe in our work, and to look for these clients that are wanting something different, something unique. That I'm still looking. If you want the philosophical me, I'm still looking for the maximum artistic expression of golf.
Would you
I'm still in search for it.
Would you characterize? It seems like you would characterize yourself in if we're talking real life architecture more on the maximalist side than the minimalist side.
Oh yes, yes. The approach, depending on what you're looking at, because on the construction side, on the value engineering side, on all that side, I can be minimalist. I've done miracles with little money, and that's also part of the show. Sometimes you hear, "Oh, we just remodeled this $28 million remodel." I'm like, well, of course you did. I wouldn't do that. Do it with two.
Yeah.
Do miracles with two. And that's what we've been doing. So our creative juices are always out there because we have to do miracles with less.
Yeah.
I can only dream about a $28 million project. Let's go.
I think you could get really crazy.
Oh, that. So it's been great. Yeah, I think I just like to the experimental phase, Andy, for any creative mind is fabulous, and I think that's where I love to stand on the experimental side of things. If I play the guitar, I can also play. Let's try the mandolin. Let's do the Octopus Garden by the Beatles. That's that. That's what we want. That's what we strive for.
Yeah. I think, diversity, having a lot of different work. I think that's something that I respect a lot about, say an architect like Tom Doak, in the sense that he's built golf courses where he's moved almost no earth.
Yes.
But then he's also built golf courses like the Texas Tech University course in Lubbock, where it's just dead flat land, and he just went nuts and moved all kinds of dirt. Like having that range. I mean, that's what the great bands, and a lot of times the iconic, timeless bands, have exceptional range and diversity and sound, right? And if you're talking about a golf architect, having that diversity in sound and is almost the ability to adapt your style and your principles to different situations.
That is a beautiful way of putting it. And yes. And obviously my admiration to Tom Doak. We're not yet in the same sentence, but we're working on it.
That's right. It's one job at a time.
But yes, you see all these, great minds out there that are creating beautiful things and stunning work with, again, the how versatile are you? Depending on the brief that you have in front of you. The why is the most important bit for a creative. Why are you doing this? And once you have that clear, you can go. That is very important. If you understand that, then the next steps fall into place.
I'm curious, what do you think is missing from modern golf architecture right now?
Modern as in
what's happening now, today?
The new age of golf.
What's happening the last 20 years? What's something that you feel is missing?
Missing? I don't know. Because first, it's great that we are going back to that, going back to go forward, if I may. It's great that we're surrounded by so many beautiful minds, creative, that are students of the game. And I think that's part of being, something that's happening very fantastic in our industry now. What's missing in general? I wouldn't dare to say, I don't know. To me, like I mentioned, I love the golden age of architecture, and to some that could be, or that means it's the highest, It's the best artistic expression there's ever been in golf architecture. In my way of thinking, I'm still trying to discover it. What is, yes, based on all the different aspects that we have passed through the years in golf architecture, how do I take that and do something different? You know, I studied Alister MacKenzie, and I said, what would Alister MacKenzie do if he was alive today? That's what I think about. I don't know if he would do the same thing.
It is an interesting question, because like they were, you know, you talk about constraints, like they were very much constrained with equipment.
Yes.
But I mean, like if you look at some of his projects, some of the things he built, like there was like a maximal aspect to them, like the mounding at the Jockey Club, or the you know,
Sidwell
like
Park.
Yeah, Sitwell Park Green. Like those are big earth moving moments in a time when you consider how limited the earth moving capabilities were. Like think about the 8th green at Augusta National when he built it in 1930, 1930 effectively. Right?
Cypress Point out in the point. I mean, it's yes.
It is a fascinating, like people like often say like they would cringe at, and I don't know what their reaction would be. I think they'd cringe to like some of the societal things that happen today versus then. But like, I do wonder, it is like everybody assumes that they would be like offended at certain things with the game. But I also think with the level of artistic expression that we saw from some of these architects, like I think they would be pretty interested in where they could push the art form. Because to me, it seemed like when the Great Depression happened, everything kind of stopped.
Yes.
But if you look at the latest architecture and where it was going, you know, Perry Maxwell was like pushing almost supreme minimal. Like he was going one way different direction. But then you had like Alister MacKenzie was building seemingly more and more contouring, like getting pretty wild with contouring, which is an earth moving endeavor.
Yes.
And then you had people like Langford and Moreau or Charles Banks that were using steam shovels to manufacture stuff. So it was interesting. Like we had this like two kind of schools diverging in the 30s when it got halted. But like one of the, you know, like, I don't know. I do think like when I think about the future, the next 20 years of golf architecture, I do wonder where the idea, like I think everything gets thrown in this minimalism bucket that, and a lot of it's not necessarily minimal, but it gets thrown there, like natural aesthetic looking bunkers with like rumpled edges are just deemed minimal today. But I do wonder like how much more evolution does the minimalist movement have versus like what are the next steps of maximalism? Is there a version of manufactured that kind of like really comes back in vogue?
That's a very interesting one. Obviously, we can't answer that yet. Only time will tell. But that's the evolution of art, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, you grab exactly. I mean, as you grab and you go from the neoclassic to the neo-Gothic or to the it's normal in paintings and in buildings, and so you have all these movements. Ironically, I think golf in the artistic way of seeing this. Holds on to the expression for 500 years. I mean, maybe only passing. There's some changes probably in the Victorian era with the greens designed a little bit different in that era. But other than that, we came up with this. You know, it has secured the way of designing the materials, the construction, the principles of the sport or of the game. I think that is here to stay. So what I think the minimalist approach should always be there. I think it should always be embraced, and then from there we can take off every here and there. I think that's what, everybody likes or can listen to classical music or can listen to a classical band or classic band. But we always, sometimes we like to, bang our heads or go to a I don't know, a rave party every now and then. I don't know, but we need that diversity, and the lucky thing that we have and we live is that creativity at the end knows no borders. So we don't know where the next golf architect's going to come from. We don't know where the next artist, where the next singer, where this, and that's the beauty of art. The artistic expression is what we should embrace here. Being minimalist or being, an exaggerated view or something different, something new, something diverse. We'll see.
Yeah, I think like if one of my big critiques in golf architecture as a whole is we've got way too much stuff that's just right down the middle and not very interesting. And the challenge right now in the industry is how could we possibly get a substantial amount of remodels and rebuilds done at the price tag for remodels and rebuilds,
Yeah, exactly. Sustainability is the bottom line at the end for the majority of the projects. We have a few here and there that it really doesn't matter in the economics or in the membership. We don't. I only have 3 members. That doesn't matter, and that's part of the beauty. But in the middle section, we have to. At the end, it has to be sustainable. In the economic and the ecological and in the social aspect. And that's part of the beauty too. That's the challenge as well. When you challenge when you create with restrictions, that also gets interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of belief that artistic creativity is maximized with more restrictions. The more
it's challenged. I don't know if maximized, but it's challenged. And when that challenge crosses, let's say a glass ceiling, that's when you have the geniuses.
Well, I'll just leave it here. I don't know if the challenge of a restricted green section is going to yield the best set of par 3s in TGL, but I think you guys did your best with the challenge presented for the par 3 of having a similar green. Augie, this was great having you on. It was really a fun discussion, and look forward to doing it again sometime. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of your designs as the TGL season rolls on. And I assume you'll be back for season 2 with some new designs. So thank you for coming on. Everybody can follow you. You're active on social media. Your Instagram is at Piza Golf, Piza Golf, no underscore or anything.
Yes.
But look forward to seeing more of your in real life work as well as more of your TGL work.
Thank you very much for your time, your interest in our work. I really enjoyed this chat, and let's go. I think it's going to be a fun TGL season.
All right. Before we get to Will, if you're enjoying this conversation and just design, if you're into this podcast, check out Club TFE. We're doing a ton of stuff there. I'm really, really excited. We've embarked on a new website project, and we will be bringing a new version of our website in Q1, ideally. I hope. I think it's Q1. Yeah, it would be Q1. We're planning to be done with it. But one of the big impetuses of that is improving the membership experience for our Club TFE members. And we think it's pretty good right now, and we think it's only going to get better. But it's, we're investing in it because of all the support we've gotten from Club TFE. So we are doing a lot of golf course architecture commentary there. You get early access to events, which are releasing every week for the next couple months. And then you also get 10% off the pro shop. So if you're interested in our membership, go to thefriedegg.com/membership. It's $120 for the year. And all that money goes to help supporting our growth and continue to deliver better and better products for you, our listeners and readers. So big thanks to everybody that supported us and would love to see you in the club. All right, let's get to Will Carlson. All right, I'm joined by Will Carlson. Will is a freshman at Cal Poly. And you might be wondering, why are we having a college kid on the show? Will did something I just found out about up the road from me at Northwood Golf Club. It's like kind of like a cult following golf course. It is a stunning. It's an Alister MacKenzie design. It's had better days, if I'm being honest, but you play in this epic setting with giant redwood trees, and you play along the Russian River, and it is just a mesmerizing place. I know a lot of Pacific Northwest people and people of Northern California are like, what's the big deal? It's just some redwood trees. But anybody that's not from the area playing in that setting with those redwood trees is an unforgettable golf course. It's a golf course we've done a pretty big amount of coverage on over the years. And so it's a 9-hole Alister MacKenzie course that I've always dreamed about, some restoration work. Little did I know, a high school student, Will Carlson, pitched the owners and completed the first restoration work at Northwood Golf Club recently. Will, I would love to hear about how you got interested in Northwood and how you began the process of starting to get restoration work done there as a high schooler.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah. So I guess when I first got out to Northwood, I was probably like in middle school at some point, and my grandparents would take me out there because it's like so low key. That's all Northwood's about. Everyone who goes out there plays just to kind of get away from all the pretentious golf side, which is Northwood is anything but, which is kind of ironic with how it started out as like the most pretentious thing you could possibly imagine. And now it's like the most casual place and awesome. It's just like so unique for how many different people get to play there. And it's so laid back. But I know, and maybe some people who've heard of Northwood, it was started by the Bohemian Grove, which is across the river from it out there on the Russian River, which is just crazy how it ended up being what it is today. But yeah, so I guess I just reached out because I had been playing the course. And then at some point, probably in like 2021 or something, when I was starting to get interested in golf architecture, I started to learn it was MacKenzie. And I was like, there's something here. Once I actually began to be able to recognize MacKenzie features, I'm like, this is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's I think the thing about the golf course is it is, a shell of what it once was. But one of the beauties of it is that nothing's, like the bunkers don't exist anymore, but they're sitting there. They weren't filled with dirt. They are just sitting there. So a fairly amateur eye, like someone learning about golf architecture, it's very easy to see where a bunker was. So what one of the things that you hit on that I love about Northwood, I love that, it was a course that you went when you were a kid. Very young, beginner. I remember
played my first high school tournament ever at Northwood, which is pretty funny.
I remember your parents or grandparents or uncle or whoever got you into golf. My dad took me, I remember, for my first round. And you take someone for the first round to the least pretentious, most laid back place that you could find. And I think that's one of the things that I love about Northwood is that you go there and you see people of all walks of life.
Definitely.
You've got golf hipsters, you've got serious golfers, you've got just like guys in jeans and tank tops. You have a wild walk of life.
It can get pretty wild out there sometimes in both good and bad ways. But yeah, it's super special. Nothing like it anywhere I've gone.
So
at least in California.
Let's talk about the history, because one of the things that you've done, you've produced a YouTube video that
I did
dives deep into the history of Northwood. And I mean, anybody that's played there or interested in Alister MacKenzie, interested in Northwood, should go watch it. But let's talk about like the process of you. So you're getting into golf architecture. You love this golf course. You live 25 minutes away, and it's a special place, and you begin to really want to learn more about the history. So let's talk about how did you go about this. I've done like some small digging, but nothing substantial, and it's a hard place to find information about.
Tell me about it. That's kind of what got me into the whole thing, because I watched the video that came out a few years ago about Northwood, like scratch golf, and we went in to talk to Gaylord about the history. He's like, it's Alister MacKenzie, but that's all I know. And I'm like, as someone who's getting into golf architecture, I'm like, there's no way they don't know anything. And I went out there, and once I started talking to them, asking stuff, after I did a little bit of research on my own, they were like, yeah, we don't really know anything. And I was just like shocked, because I think the original clubhouse out there burnt down. So they don't have any of the original plans or anything, unless they're still in the Grove, which I don't have no idea. But
I feel that's always been my theory, is that there is just a treasure trove of information in the Grove.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of information probably about a lot of stuff there.
Oh, stuff that we'll never get to know about. Yeah. But I'll try and pull some strings to look at that at some point. But what I was able to find, basically, before I started talking to Gaylord and them there, I was just looking through aerial photographs of around the time 30s and 40s and whatnot, and then just trying to read articles and stuff. And there's nothing. There's very little on all the aerial photographs, because the trees are so tall, you can't see the golf course.
Yes, I've run into this issue.
So, but I was able to find, I was just Googling and just going in through Pinterest and stuff, trying to find images. And I was able to find a few of just like random pictures from like the 40s and 50s of people playing. There's like the mayor of the town out there playing golf. There's a few good shots.
Where did you find these?
Just on the Sonoma County archives.
Okay.
They're like free domain access. And then I also, when I started talking to Gaylord, they gave me, he took a few like scans of these old postcards that they still have. Like, a lot of golf courses have them where it's like the picture of the course and then like the white handwriting at the bottom. They had like 5 of those. They had the first, the second, the fourth, and then a few pictures on 9 looking back. But some of them they're from like different times. There was only about 3 that were from early on. And they were definitely not as high quality as the one that you've seen in the pro shop of 6.
That photo's mesmerizing. That
photo's amazing. That's how high quality it is. And that one is special, definitely. But yeah, so basically after I got all those photos, I kind of started to try and see like how they would fit. Because a lot of the features, like you said, are still there. Like you just have to walk around like, oh, there's a bunker there. Oh, there's this here. You can see where the original greens were.
And what we're saying by this is the bunker is dug, but they were never grass.
Filled in.
There's just
they were never
grass.
Filled in.
So if a layman, anybody, as soon as you explain what that was, it used to be a bunker, you can go out there and find dozens of them.
Oh yeah. I think there were about 30 or so originally, but there's just clear as day. Because I think that's why Northwood is so, I'm fascinated by it, is because like they've never done anything to it except for like losing tees and one of the greens, but everything else is just exactly how it was. And they didn't even sand greens for a long time. So there's very little sand buildup except for on a few of the bunkers that were there before I got there. Those have obviously built up, but it's pretty original.
The greatest restoration candidates are always the places that never had enough money to screw things up.
And that's Northwood, if anything. But I guess back to the history, we can get to that, is like, so basically what I've got through it by just talking to people and reading what I could is that the Bohemian Grove, obviously all the rich people out there, they wanted to play golf and they didn't want to have to drive into town every day there wasn't even that many good golf courses at the time. And what was crazy is that Jack Neville, who co-designed Pebble Beach, was a member of the Bohemian Grove. And this was around 1926. The course started construction in 28. So he must have been, MacKenzie was redoing the greens at Pebble Beach, 8 and 13 in 1926. So I can only imagine. This is just me putting together the dots.
Also at this time, Alister MacKenzie is designing Meadow Club, which is effectively halfway in between Pebble Beach and Northwood.
Yeah. So I'm assuming he met MacKenzie, and that was kind of starting the Cypress Point, getting that moving. And he's like, oh, why don't you come up here and do this for us? I guess, I don't know why he wouldn't have done it himself. I guess he just wanted, maybe the members wanted the best of the best. Mm-hmm. But he ended up going up there. There's one picture that's alleged to be him of this train car parked, because the road there used to be train track. That was the only way you could get there, was by train, like this narrow gauge rail. But there's a picture of a man like leaning up against a train car that's parked by where the course was being built. And they said that he stayed there because he wasn't allowed to stay in the Grove.
Interesting.
MacKenzie. So that's kind of funny, but I don't think he was there. I think he just went to the property, like lay out the course, like get the initial design, which he did because he was busy and it was impossible to travel back then. I can't imagine getting to Northwood out there in the middle of nowhere 100 years ago. But
shortly after he got to Australia. I mean,
exactly.
One of the fascinating things, like people always talk about Donald Ross and like fascination about his travels and all across the country. It's like Alister MacKenzie designed golf courses in South America, Europe, North America, and Australia.
Yeah. When I was talking to some people, they were saying, talking about MacKenzie at Meadow Club, he had to take a train to San Francisco, a ferry across, a train.
Yeah, because the bridge wasn't done, right?
Exactly. No bridge. So he had to take a ferry, another train, and then from like the main area in Sonoma and Marin, he had to take a horse and buggy up the mountain to get to Meadow Club. And then Northwood's even farther. So it's I'm assuming he only went out there to like lay it out. And I'm assuming he had his associates go out there and do the final shaping, because I was able to find some newspaper article on the MacKenzie like history chronicle that said it opened in 1929, not 1928. So same year as the Depression started, but it opened and he wasn't there. So I'm assuming he was only there for the initial layout. But yeah, so opened in 1929, and then the Depression, and the Bohemian Grove was like, need this anymore, and it got sold off. I don't know off the top of my head who it got sold to initially, but whoever it was, it was still so hard to maintain anything at the time.
So anybody that's been to Northwood or seen photos of Northwood, I feel like it's become impossible to open Instagram without seeing photos of Northwood. It's become the influencer spot. But you're mesmerized by the giant trees. I think, at this point, with where the golf course is in its state, like the draw. Yeah, it has Alister MacKenzie's name, but it's more the trees. Mm-hmm. I found it fascinating in your work. Can you explain the dynamics of the trees? Because one of my favorite photos I have is this photo behind two, looking back two.
Yeah, I've seen that one
my
on the
favorite
website.
Part of the photo, what people are always like, this is an amazing photo. I always say, the best part about it is that there is a giant dump truck on the left side, and it looks like a toy car next to this tree that it's next to. And it's crazy. My favorite part of the whole thing. It's like until you're there, you do not understand the enormous nature of these trees. And obviously, this part of the country, it's kind of like the bottom part of this massive redwood forest grove that extends up through the northern part of the state. But when this was built, why was this even able to be built in understanding the dynamic of these trees?
Yeah, so the trees that are there today are not the original trees. Those have all grown since. Those were not there originally. So basically,
these are roughly 100-year-old trees, but
I think they're about 150, because in the 1880s was when the logging was just decimating the redwoods out there. I mean, the towns out there, there was one town, now it's called Guerneville, it's called Stump Town, because there's nothing but stumps that you could see for miles.
That that'd be a great, if there's a golf course in Guerneville, it'd be a great name.
That would be awesome. They could market that. It's close enough. But anyway, so when MacKenzie went out to build the course, it was like the trees were probably about 30 feet tall, nothing except they look like little fir trees, like compared to what they are now. They're tiny. But I think the property had been used for like military training early in like the teens for like World War I or something. It was like a military camp. And so it was kind of, some areas were kept clear because it was like a ranch. And then the Bohemian Grove bought it because they're like, it's the flattest thing out here because everything else is just mountains.
So the trees were new, young trees.
Very young.
And they've grown to what they are now, but also with the way redwoods are, they still have more growing to do, correct?
Oh yeah. I mean, they can live to be 2,000 years old. So, and I've actually talking to Trevor, the superintendent out there. He's not even allowed to touch some of the trees because they're protected by the state, which is kind of a problem when you're trying to maintain a golf course under 150-foot trees.
This is the challenge of Northwood, and I think like you know, anybody that goes out there, you are going out there more for the experience. Than it's. I would say, given the the setting, impossible to have extraordinary agronomic conditions. However, I do think like when you talk about like, I mean, I live really close to Meadow Club, and one of the challenges of Meadow Club is they have original MacKenzie greens, and many of them have very few hole locations. We recently saw Pasatiempo undertake a giant renovation. One of the core tenets of it was to establish more hole location potential.
I got to go out to that project and talk with Rubina about what they were doing there, and it's really interesting because he talked about how the greens went from tiers due to sanding just to slopes. And Northwood doesn't have that because they never sanded the greens. So the original tiers are like where they are.
And like the reality of where it is like you're never going to be able to push the agronomics extremely.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, in the past few years, it's gotten a lot better. They've done a lot of really good work on it. I remember when I was first playing it, it was just, I mean, and there's not much like solid turf out there, but when I played it originally, there was like no grass. It was just dirt, and the greens were like unputtable because how they've done a lot of really good work in these last few years to try and do it. But there's not much you can do, and that almost makes it better because the greens play how they're supposed to.
Exactly. It is. I think like one of the things that I've always thought with Northwood is it has this opportunity to really be like, you know, beyond the MacKenzie name, the redwood trees, but it has the opportunity to really be throwback golf, right? You can come here and you can get a little bit of a slice of what golf was like to play in 1940 and 1950, when everything wasn't, maintained on like a razor's edge. And I think that the whole place has a charm about it. If you're someone who really cares about conditioning, it's not going to be for you.
No.
But like the charm of it, the quaintness of it, the trees, the mystique of it, but then also just like how it ties in with the little pro shop, how it ties in with I love the restaurant. I will never go there and not eat at the restaurant.
It's an experience. It's unlike anything else around that I've ever been to, but yeah, it's just so. Whenever time I go out there and play, I try, unless I'm playing with my friends for like competition or something, I'll bring my old I have clubs that were my great grandfather's, like 1930s, very early. I think they're metal shafts, but they're painted to look wood, and I'll play out there with those. And it's so interesting because like you see every single bunker is right where you want to hit it. The greens are so interesting to putt on with, just because of how slow it is. The slopes work totally differently. Like you're not hitting a putt like a foot and it's rolling 35 feet. You have to like hammer it in some places. And it's so interesting to play it with how he intended.
Of the old photos, we've talked a little bit about the sixth. You had a few old photos of a few holes. What was the one that mesmerizes you the most?
I'd probably say there's this one really cool photo. It's how there's the hill before like the blind of second green.
Yeah.
There's someone standing on top of that hill taking a picture through. So you have the second green and then you have the fourth green beyond it. And you get both of them layered. So the second green used to be huge. Like it went even higher up that insane slope on the right, extended way closer to the down slope. And then there was a bunker on the left there where that bay tree is now. Mm-hmm. And then the fourth green in the back, which is already an insane green with the enormous backside. It's like you talk about buried elephants, and that's all that could be. And then there's this huge bunker on the hill on the right side. This very MacKenzie as you can get. And then there's no houses, obviously, originally. And there's just enormous trees in the background.
It's cool. I think like the one thing that changed, and you hit on this in your video, it's so apparent when you play the golf course, because you have these greens that are very sloped. And then you get to the third hole, it's a par 3, and it's like a pancake.
Yeah, so, it's really sad. And that green is sinking into the ground because when they were building the course, they just buried the stumps. They couldn't take them out because they're huge. Uh-huh. So the stumps are decomposing and the green is sinking into the ground. If you played in the winter, it fills up with water. So
that's something they have to address at some point.
Yeah. And I'm saying, why not do it in the style of what MacKenzie did? That's the one hole that I know nothing about, because the trees there are so tight that you can't see anything from above and there's no pictures.
And it's so clear based off the next tee shot that the green used to be further out and the old tee used to be further back.
Yeah, it used to be like 175. And then, so overall, the first hole lost about like 50 yards. Second hole used to be 450 yards, blind green, par 4 in 1929.
The first hole lost 50 yards where?
It used to be behind the restaurant at the base of that hill behind 9 green.
The tee box was back.
Yeah. Like that little bunker right in the middle of the fairway that's like 80 yards off the tee. That would have been actually in play for worse golfers back then.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that one was longer. Hole 2 was people struggle with that hole today. I couldn't imagine playing it at 450 yards to a blind green. I'm like, it's kind of insane.
That to me, that I wrote an article after I played there and did a very crappy Photoshop of what I thought the green would be. And it's like that hole to me is like, you're talking about a great hole in California,
Oh yeah. It's spectacular. And the fairway undulations are incredible on the course. Like no one talks about it, but hole 2 fairway, the 4th fairway is insane.
What about the fairway undulations appeals to you so much?
So I feel like, I talked to Gaylor and he said that when they built the course, obviously, like I said, they couldn't take out the stumps. So they just buried them. And there's all these little moguls everywhere. And then for drainage, there's these little, you can almost like mock streams that go through the fairways. And it gives it the really like natural, linksy, rumpled look. And it gives you'll never have a flat lie at Northwood. Even though it's not that hilly of a property, you'll never have a flat lie because of all the little rumples.
It's super unique because most times in these, most of California is populated in mountain valleys, and you're in valleys, and the valleys are, for the most part, just gradual slopes.
Yeah.
They just gradually slope and there's very little micro movement. Mm-hmm. It reminds me, a few years ago, we had Brian Schneider on, and he was talking about North Jersey, a golf course that he's been restoring over the years. And he talked about how the course got all these like little bumps and humps in it because the members wanted to play the golf course early in construction. And the deal was they could play, but they had to pick up all the rocks in the fairways and toss them into piles. And that's how what have become like really great features of these golf holes. But this is such a similar type of place where like these bumps in the fairway are just redwood stumps.
Yeah. Yeah. And you almost don't realize, like, you can look at the fairway, it looks flat. When you get out there, you can have a lie in the middle of the fairway where the ball is 3 feet below your feet. And it's like, it's hard to not to slice it into trees. And that's another thing about the course is that the trees are so big that they make everything else seem small. And it's really not like, if people say, oh, it's so narrow, the fairways really aren't. They're like 30 to 40 yards wide. It just feels so narrow. It's like claustrophobic because the trees are so big.
This is something like I think that I say this to people are always ask me like when they see pictures like how do you must be hitting trees all the time, and it's such a perfect example of like the concept of scale and what giant scale items do to everything around them. These trees are so big that everybody thinks it's so narrow, but there's plenty of space.
Except for the 9th where they built the houses too close to the fairway, which is the only thing that really, that and number 2. But yeah, it's incredible. If you play with the hickories, you're never going to hit a ball in the trees.
Yes.
Because you don't have that much soft dispersion and the trees are so far away that you're really never going to hit into them. It
is a perfect hickory golf course. Like
I agree 100%.
So let's talk about, so you've gathered this history. In the video, you've put together basically an aerial sketch of what you think the golf course looked like and with the bunker schemes.
I had 2 iterations of that too. I did one that I did and then I found more information. So I had to do it again and change some things, but yeah, so I kind of just went and tried to predict what it used to be.
You're probably going to find more information at a later date, and you're going to keep iterating.
I had half of it in ink, and then I realized, oh wait, there's a bunker here, and then I had to add it. I'll probably have to do it again at some point.
So after you've compiled all this, how did you go about approaching Gaylord Shapp and his son? Is Trevor, right?
Yeah,
Trevor, the superintendent, about the idea of starting to get some work done at Northwood. I mean, you're a high schooler.
Yeah.
Like I think this is like kind of the amazing part of the story.
Yeah. So I guess I basically just kind of started doodling and just drawing stuff and thinking about what could you do. And I just went out there and I had been asking them for history stuff already. And first thing I did, I gave them the map of the course of what it used to be to kind of like, I guess in my head, it was getting them interested because I'm sure you've realized that not many people out there are there for the history, but I wanted to kind of show them how like special it was. And they knew it was special, but I wanted to like help visualize. And then they're like, yeah, we've always wanted to do something, but we've never really gotten around to it. And I'm like, well, why don't we do it? So I kind of I went out there with Trevor and we went out with spray paint and outlined the bunkers, which is so easy because you can just...
All of them?
I think about 7. We did 2 on number 2, and then the fairways on number 5, and then some of the other ones on 6. So we've found a few, and the ones on 4 were ridiculous. I really wanted to do 4, but there's 2 issues with those 2 greenside bunkers. The one on the right faces directly to the houses across the street. They're like 15, 20 yards away. So those are going to get pummeled by people thinning out there. And that bunker was like 10 feet deep originally. And I'm like, and they're like, that one's gonna be too penal. I'm like, okay, I get it. And then the one on the left is a little shallower. But I wanted to put there, but like there's a bay tree hanging over it. It's just gonna dump leaves into it all the time. But in a storm a few weeks ago, the tree fell down. So now I'm like, let's do that one. But anyway, back to the original one. So I narrowed it down to the little one in the fairway on number 1, and then the number 6. I said the one on number 1 I was thinking about because that one's even like simpler there. And the key was already having a drain there because we didn't want to have to tear up the whole fairway to do it. Like they already had a drain there because it's such a low spot and would fill up with water otherwise. But I proposed those 2 and Trevor and Gaylord were into it. They had started and they were really interested in the history. So I just went on a Zoom call with the board of all the stakeholders. And
who's the board?
I think there's a bunch of owners. So Gaylord's father, when he bought it in 1970, he bought it from the company. He bought it and it was in horrendous shape. There was no grass on the greens. It was like dirt greens, like 1900 Victorian golf. There was no grass. And then they were able to kind of fix it together, but he bought it with a bunch of other people and they still own stake in the course. So there's I think there was 4 or 5 different stakeholders. But I pitched it to the board. I showed them, I gave them some measurements and stuff, volume and rough pricing, and we were able to get it approved.
That's amazing.
But it was interesting. They said the price wasn't an issue, and I'm like, okay, well.
Roughly, if you don't mind giving us a ballpark, you put one bunker back. what did that cost out to? Did you have to rent equipment? How did the other thing is, I assume you've never built a bunker before.
I have in my backyard.
Okay.
Actually, not really.
Tell us about the backyard bunker.
So my backyard, I have like a little 20-25 yard lawn, and I'm like, it wasn't really like maintained. So I just one day I put a pot in the ground to use as a golf hole. This was like years ago. And I started mowing it like a golf course, just like taking the regulation off of the lawnmower and dropping it down so I could mow it at green height.
Just scalping it.
Just scalping the lawn. And then eventually I actually got it. You can kind of putt on it. It's like a fairway. Uh-huh. And then my dad cut down this tree and he was taking out the stump. So I just kept digging below the stump and made it a bunker.
Hand digging?
Yeah, with a pick and shovel.
Oh, it's awful. I built one bunker that way.
Well, there was some of that at Northwood too. But yeah, so I did that. They're like little tiny bunkers, like maybe 8 feet by 3 feet. Like you can take a swing out of it because they're pretty level. But there's 2 of them. There's one that's like a pot bunker and there's like a shallower one. But yeah, so I guess I had a little bit of experience with that. And then at Northwood, I had to move a lot less dirt because it was already there. We just had to kind of dig down for drainage and like doing some finger pipes just to get that down. But so we already had he had the excavator on site because they're always doing work out there trying to fix tee boxes and whatnot. But so we had the excavator already, and then after I had it outlined, he just kind of took away the stuff in the middle, just the grass. We went out there with a sod cutter, cut out all the grass. And then I got in there with a pick and kind of defined where I wanted the edge to be exactly, and I kept doing that as he kept excavating. And then we just kind of went about it. We did tarp, and then we wanted to do better belly, but we couldn't get that because they only do like large amounts, or else it would just be ridiculously expensive. So we did that, put the gravel in and the pipe and got the drainage in. So overall, I think it cost around like a little less than $5,000, between $4,000 and $5,000. Because it was all in house.
What in terms of what you found sand too, right?
Yes. Yeah. So after we scalped, and then he took I think we only took out about a foot of dirt in the bunker because it's just like accumulating over time to get it to be below grade a little bit. And then, so we started finding sand.
And that means you're right in the right spot.
I was like, well, see, I mean, it'd be pretty hard to deny that it wasn't here, but now we got physical evidence, which is pretty funny. And then it was kind of harder to find like the upper edge because there's less sand there initially. So I kind of had to what's interesting is that the picture that I'm sure that you know about 6 is not actually of that bunker, because there's 6 different bunkers on that hole originally. Yeah. So
okay, so yours was not one of the ones in the picture.
Yeah, so the ones in the picture, there's the left bunker on the left green side, right green side, one like 25 yards short, which is the one in the front of the picture. And then mine is like 20 yards behind that.
Okay.
It's actually a really interesting strategic hole without that, if that tree that was hanging over wasn't there, because like the farther left you go, you have to carry more bunkers and you have a side hill lie. Meanwhile, if you go to the right, which shows 2 really deep bunkers, which aren't in play anymore because the tree got so big, obviously they're not there, but they would have been perfect to hit a carry over that to the right side, and then you have a good angle. But it kind of is on a ridge, so it does give some blindness, which is kind of why I wanted to do it, because it's very MacKenzie-esque in that sense.
Do you have like goals of trying to do more? And what are those conversations like? And like how, I imagine, so you're in school, you're in San Luis Obispo. So you're ways away. Is this like what you're hoping your summer project is or something?
Well, this summer I actually have something lined up. I'm going to be working back. Well, actually I got into golf architecture, actually into the field, kind of getting more hands-on at Lake Merced with Gil Hance there. I would send an email to the superintendent and was able to get out there and watch that. But I'm going to be working there as the assistant superintendent this summer.
Oh, awesome. What are you formally studying?
I'm studying landscape architecture down here. So just the standard degree to get into that most golf architects take to get into it.
It's amazing. So do you have goals of doing more at Northwood?
I definitely. There's actually talk about, because the 100th anniversary is coming up.
28.
So Gaylord was talking about redoing the 9th green because everyone hates it because it's such a severe slope. And I'm like, I want it to be done right. I don't want it to get botched. So I'm like, if you're doing something, I'm going to be there watching what's happening, because I think I probably know the most about the history of design, at least. And the 9th green used to be crazy too. It used to have these 2 wings out on the right and left side. There used to be, I think, 3 or 4 bunkers around the green. It used to be really cool. And I'm like, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. That green seems a little bit like we were talking about earlier, the slope getting too severe, like, because the only part of the green left is the false front.
Yeah.
The rest of the green got abandoned. Now it's just all false front.
It's so like ornamental stuff on the back parts, right?
Yeah.
If I
so I think
correct.
There's like a bunch of little like weird shapes in the hill in the back, and I'm like, maybe there was some of those scrab bunkers that MacKenzie did, and then in the front there was all these. You can see easily on the left side there was a bunker, and then banked into like the base of the trees on the right, I think there was another one. So I'm like, if we're going to do it, we need to do it right, because that would be a travesty to have an original MacKenzie green and just do something wrong with it. But I think there's motion to get that done.
That's exciting. That's exciting as a fan of
You'll have
Northwood.
to come down. You can come consult with the project.
Well, you just let me know when you're there. It's a short drive for me. So let me know when you're going to be around, and we'll go up and play. I'll bring my hickories. You can play.
Yeah, we can have a match. That'd be fun.
So, hey, thanks so much for coming on. This was a real joy to chat with you, and congrats on doing something. I mean, it's unbelievable that what you were able to accomplish at before you left for college. Yeah, it was pretty special, and now it got me into talking to a lot of good people. So super exciting. Thank you for listening to another edition of the Friday Golf Podcast. We will be back next week. We've got a couple more interviews piling in. Big thanks to everybody who's been listening in the new year. We're really excited about this Wednesday release and new schedule. And big thanks to PJ Clark for editing and producing this podcast. We'll see you next week.